All right, I'm going to kick things off here. This is Brandon Galarno with Tidestone Solutions. I am the Director of Business Development. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope that this time was convenient for you at 1 o'clock, a little bit after lunch. Hopefully you guys were able to eat and we weren't cutting into it. This is our first webinar. We're planning to do a series of these on a monthly basis going forward. And aim to have them around the 17th to the third week of the month, if that's convenient. I will shoot over an email to everybody after the webinar this afternoon, just for some feedback. Anything that you guys have to say would be appreciated. Any value and things that we could improve going forward, we would definitely like to know. I'm just going to make a quick introduction about my role here at Tidestone and go over a few slides about the background of the company. Most everyone here is a customer of ours, so you guys are probably familiar with us, but I will just get things rolling. Tidestone Solutions, we've been improving business processes for 20 plus years. At this point it's actually I think closer to 25, and things are going really well over here. We're growing. We just added another member to our staff, Heather Neville, so I would encourage you all to reach out to her if you haven't spoke with her yet. We've been delivering productivity tools and business solutions to our customers, but not just on the GP level. There's many add-on softwares and ISV solutions that can help you cover every part of your business. We're existing customer focused. We really enjoy partnerships with our clients. We're here to help you improve your business process and grow, not just looking to pick up customers and sell software. For the most part, we've been with our client base for a long period of time, and we enjoy long-term relationships with our customers. Also, we're primarily in the New England region. We have a couple of customers outside, one in the Southwest and one on the West Coast. And just some information about our consultants and business process experts. We help you guys with software selection. In addition to GP, we also help with any type of software that can improve your business process. So for example, right now we're working with a distributor in New Hampshire with their selection on a fulfillment process that would integrate with Great Plains. Also data conversion, helping bring in data into the system from other software applications, integrating applications with systems like POS and e-commerce from the website. A big portion of our business is training and support. We offer specific product training on modules like payroll and HR. We're also offering a hot item right now, which is what's new with GP for 2013. And also, if you have any new employees, the Did You Know training has been one of the hot items. We have custom reporting. We have a consultant on site that their specialist is writing reports. So we have a lot of reports that we've already designed. And if there's anything out there that you guys would like custom designed in reporting, feel free to reach out. Software implementation, obviously, Great Plains and Intact. That's another software that we just recently took on. Automation of tasks, anything to help you guys streamline your business, and custom development and or customizations and development, helping tailor the software to fit your business needs. And then the last one is helping you guys refine your business process. So using GP and any other technology to help you streamline your business process and help you guys operate more efficiently. And that was it on the slides that I had to go through with you guys. I'll turn it over to Alicia. She's going to take you guys into the 1099.
Hi everyone, I hope you're ready for learning about 1099 processing. Like Brandon said, this is our first webinar, so any feedback you can give us, positive, negative, constructive, we're happy to hear that so that we can make these webinars as valuable to you as possible. What we're going to talk about today is how you process 1099s in Dynamics GP. I will be in the version GP 2010 for our demo purposes, but the 1099 processing is very much the same in version 10 as well if you're not quite on 2010. I will ask that you hold questions until the end or send the question via chat if you're afraid you'll forget what the question is, and we'll review those at the end. That way we can have a nice flow and go back and revisit anything that you might have a question on or need to dig a little deeper. So having said that, we'll just get started here. Whoops. I just skipped ahead one too many. Hold on one second. There we go. So we'll be looking at how we get to the 1099 reporting from within GP. We're going to review vendor setups. I'm going to show you a smart list to verify that you have your vendor 1099 information on that master record, their tax ID number and the type of 1099 and where you want that to report. We'll take a look at where you can verify the 1099 amounts and how you can edit the 1099 amounts. And finally, printing those 1099 forms from within GP. There are actually two approaches to managing 1099s that we're going to talk about. We're mainly going to talk about Dynamics GP, which is really a manual filing of your 1099s, where you go in and you track all the 1099 information naturally through transactions. And at the end of the year, you buy the actual laser forms and you print out the 1099 forms and you handwrite your 1096 and then you mail those to the appropriate destinations. There is another product that we support, and it's called Green Shades, where it's fully integrated with GP, so it pulls all of the data from the payables tables from those vendors and uploads it electronically. And you can submit it either electronically through Green Shades or you can pay them to actually mail your 1099 forms out, all sorts of different services that they offer. So when we look at the Dynamics GP 1099 process, it allows you to print 1099s for recipients or your vendors that are in that classification. It does not generate the federal summary report, that 1096. It has to be manually created. You do get that data from GP, which you can then physically handwrite onto the 1096. It's just a few fields that you'll fill in manually, but it is not created in GP until version 2013. So that's something to look forward to, that you'll be able to print your 1096 form from GP in the next version of GP, which was released last month. And you must manage the filing or e-filing process on your own in GP. So unlike Green Shades, who they will, once you upload the data, they will make sure that it's out in a timely fashion and in the right format. Okay, the first thing we're going to take a look at today is how do you set up a vendor to ensure that you're tracking 1099 information. And this is just a slide here. We'll go through a few slides and then I'll hop over to the actual application and we'll go through some of the process. So as you can see here, there's the vendor maintenance window back here. And there's an options button that you click. And in that options window, the vendor maintenance options, you have an area over here on the right which allows you to select what type of tax you're going to track for this vendor and which 1099 box you want that information to report on the form. And when we get into the application, we'll actually click on that drop-down menu and I'll show you what the different options are. GP records the 1099 amounts in a summary. You can also look at the detail. AP determines transaction by transaction where amounts record. So you could have a vendor who typically is a 1099 vendor, but one transaction is not necessary to be reported on for 1099. You can also record different types of 1099 payments to an individual vendor without creating multiple vendors. I know that's been a workaround in the past for customers, whereas they might pay a vendor rent and they might pay them royalties, which is two different boxes on a 1099, but you can track both of those on the same vendor. Prior to GP 2010, you had to run a utility from the Professional Services Tools Library to update 1099s automatically with a tool. Well, now in GP 2010 and later, they actually provide a utility for you to automatically change mass amounts of data, whether it be that you want to assign vendors to a specific type of 1099, because in the past, before 2010, you didn't have the option to track what type of 1099 it was, which box it went into. So you may have to use this utility to pull up your vendors to mark, it's miscellaneous and non-employee compensation. So this tool allows you to do that efficiently. Recording manual adjustments to 1099 details. GP does allow you to edit the 1099 amounts by vendor. You're able to view the data, update the information in the month that it occurred, and then the 1099 would be accurate. So this is a screenshot of the 1099 details window, which was new in 2010. In the past, you would have a screen that was a little different than this, and you had to scroll through the periods to look at 1099 information. But as you see on this screenshot, you have your vendor ID at the top, what type of tax for that vendor, and you can display either for the month or the year. And notice over here on the right, you can tell the system what year you'd like to look at. So you could look at a prior year or even several prior years right from the same window. And this is also the window we're going to use to edit the information. So there's a few different scenarios that I've come up with that cause your 1099s to be incorrect. Either the vendor was not set up properly and initially wasn't marked as a 1099 vendor, so any transaction that transpired did not go into that 1099 bucket, as you will, to report as 1099 information. Potentially you've changed a vendor mid-year to a different 1099 type. Maybe you had it set up improperly before. So even though it was set up as a 1099 vendor, you might have been tracking it as the wrong 1099 type, and you need to make that change to the vendor. Once you change it on the vendor record, it does not know intuitively to go back and change any other transactions. That's a manual process unless you use the utility. So that kind of covers item number 3. Prior posted transactions do not change automatically. So if you make a change on the vendor card, it will not automatically go back and change anything that's already been posted for that vendor. Any change you make on a vendor, transactions from that point forward will track in the type that you've selected. The utility I've been referring to is the 1099 information utility, where it can be found under your utilities on the purchasing area page if you use the area pages, or from the drop-down menus, the Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Utilities, Purchasing, and Update 1099 information. And with that utility, you can update a group of vendors from one type of 1099 tax type to another tax type. Or you can update 1099 transactions. Perhaps you had a vendor set up as rents and it should have been not employee compensation. You can run the utility to move those transactions from one bucket to another bucket so that you're not manually touching all those vendor records. And the third option is that you can do both of those at the same time. And we'll take a look at that briefly in just a minute. And then the last part of the process is the physical printing of your 1099s. Now, the GP prints out the 1099, but it does not print out the form, the shaded form that you will see in the stores. So you do need to purchase 1099 forms. You can get those at Deluxe Check, or you can get them at Staples. If you have any questions about the forms, you can let us know. But the standard Staples forms, if that's easy for you, those line up very easily. And so now we're going to go into the demo, and I'm going to show you a few things that we've touched on. All right, so here is my demo environment of GP 2010, and I am on the purchasing area page. And for those of you who are not familiar, the purchasing area page can be accessed by going over to your navigation pane here on the left, selecting Purchasing, and then everything to the right will pertain to purchase order processing and accounts payable. So that area page is really focused for a purchasing type role. All right, so let's just take a quick look at the vendor setup that's required for a 1099 vendor. And I'm just going to select Ace Travel. And here's the vendor maintenance window, which if you're processing payables, you're probably very familiar with this window. From here, to get to the 1099 setup information, you're going to click on the Options button. And for those of you not on 2010, which I'm not sure there's anyone that's not on 2010 at this point in the group, but you would notice when you went from 10 to 2010 that you now have, in addition to this option to choose what tax type, which you have 4, it's either not a 1099 vendor, dividend, interest, or miscellaneous. So for this vendor, I'm selecting miscellaneous. And when I select miscellaneous, I then have some options for which 1099 box I want the data to report in. And so there's a long list of here that you can select from, and those are all boxes on your 1099 form. So for this vendor, I've said it's rents that they're tracking. And that's really all you need to do to trigger 1099 information to be tracked for this vendor and for you to be able to print a 1099 at the end of the year. Mid-year, if you find that you did not set them up as a 1099 vendor, you would come into this window and then you would have to do some editing of the 1099 amounts, which we'll get to. So that's the setup of the vendor. So that's all fine, but you probably have an opportunity here to actually verify that your existing vendors are set up properly so that when you print a 1099, it's printing with all of the information that's required, that your tax ID is printing, that it's the correct type of vendor. And so what I'm looking at here is I've launched SmartList, and within SmartList, I opened up the purchasing node, and within that purchasing node, there's a vendors node. And within vendors, you should have a 1099 vendor SmartList already. You see the asterisk here. That means it came with GP. I did make a change, however, to this SmartList, and I'm going to show you what I made for a change. Out of the box in this SmartList, you will have your vendor ID, vendor name, and 1099 type. What I added to this SmartList before the session was the tax ID number. I went over to Columns, and I clicked on Add, and Tax ID was one of the available columns. You could even add to this whether or not you have a valid address. So if we go down, excuse me, add city, state, and last of all, zip code. We want to make sure when we mail them that they'll arrive. And I'm just going to click OK. And all of those fields have been added at the right. So at this point, I can tell I really need to work on getting my tax ID numbers entered for my vendor. And from this smart list, I can double click and get right to that window and add the tax ID number. So I can see Ace Travel does not have a tax ID number. And I can then go back into the options window. And up here I can put in my tax ID number. And when I save, and I refresh my list, you can see now that I do have a tax ID number available for that vendor. And if I want to save the changes to this smart list, I can just go to Favorites and click Modify, and it will save all of the changes that I've made to that smart list. Okay. When you're verifying 1099 amounts, I have to say there's not a great smart list to do that, which I wish there were, but because of the way that the smart lists work out of the box, they only show you the 1099 amounts since year-end close. And so that's not really accurate for 1099 reporting. You need to know for the calendar year exactly what 1099 transactions have transpired. And there's a couple of different ways that you can look at the information. Now I'm going to scroll down here to the routines area of the purchasing area page, and I'm going to click on Print 1099. Now I'm really not ready to print them, but you may not know there is an edit list in this window that you can print for 1099s just by clicking the small printer icon. Not to be confused with the print button, because this is what actually prints the 1099 form. And this is my edit list. So if I print this, and I click Screen, this is a sample of what your edit list might look like. And you can see here are the 1099 amounts that are being reported for the vendors. So this is a nice tool to compare against a check register perhaps, or maybe you have vendors that there's only a few transactions where you'd actually go to your file and take a look at the invoices. But I typically will take this 1099 edit list, and I'm going to close that, and then I would go and do a check report. So a vendor check register, and I'm just going to look at Ace Travel's checks for the year and compare it to the edit list that I ran in 1099s. So I could look at it and say, whoops, I could look at it and say, does this amount match what the 1099 report states? And granted, it's not 100% of the time that they should match. That vendor may have had some transactions that did not require you to report for 1099. They weren't 1099 taxable purchases. So these two tools can be helpful in you verifying your 1099s. So now let's take a look at how you actually edit a 1099. Okay, staying on the purchasing area page, you can see in the cards area 1099 details. Now if you don't use the area page, you would get there by going to cards, purchasing, and 1099 details. Either path will take you to the same window. So in this window here, you have a looking glass, and the nice thing about this looking glass is it only shows you those vendors who are set up as 1099 vendors, who have that option marked that they are 1099 vendor. So I'm going to select Ace Travel, and the tax type is miscellaneous that I want to look at. This is the year, and I'm going to say I want to see the total for the year. And it just so happens that this vendor had a year against royalties for $25.65. If I were to scroll through the months, I would be able to find which month that happened in. This is defaulting to April because my sample company default date is April 2017. So within here, let's say that I found out that there was an invoice that was paid, a check was cut for another $1,000 before I had the vendor set up to be a 1099 vendor. I'm not able to adjust it in the year amount. I am able to adjust any amount in the months. So let's say that there was something in March for $1,000. I would just come into March and type in 1,000 and then click Save. And it automatically updates that total. So if we come back in, we should see for that year that it's gone up 1,000, and it has. Again, I could change this to a different year and look at a different year's 1099 amounts. So that's new with 2010, where you can look at multiple years in that window. Okay. Let's actually look at the utility, and then we'll look at printing the 1099s. It's under Utilities on the Purchasing Area page, and the title of it is Update 1099 Information. And you can see up above you have three options. One is just to update the vendor. Perhaps you have a bunch of vendors. You moved from version 10 to 2010. They're all set to miscellaneous. And typically miscellaneous was always box number 7. You didn't have really much choice in changing which box. But now we're going to say, okay, let's make all of the miscellaneous rents. I'm sorry, let's make all of the miscellaneous that are set as rents, let's make them to miscellaneous non-employee. But you probably don't want that for all vendors. You could have a vendor class perhaps that are employees. So you could change it for vendor class, let's see. I don't know even if there is an employee class, but you could put in your employee class here and run that by inserting. What I'm going to do today is I'm just going to run it for one vendor. And I need to insert that restriction. And once I click Process, if that vendor was set as miscellaneous and rents, it will now be set to miscellaneous and non-employee compensation. If I wanted to do that vendor's 1099 transactions, I could just come in here and do all transactions for all vendors. Or I could select an individual vendor or group of vendors, and all of the transactions for those vendors would move accordingly. So that's the utility. That's if you have, mass amounts of information to change at one time, it can be helpful. So the last item we're going to look at is actually printing the 1099 form. And we did touch on that window a little bit, but let's go back. Under Purchasing Routines, in this Print 1099 window, you'll notice you have your company name, which address you want to print on the company, on the 1096, or on the 1099. So you might have multiple company addresses stored, so you just want to confirm that. And what is the company's federal ID number? If it doesn't default, that means that it's not set up under the company information in GP. If you want it to automatically default, you would go to Set Up Company and enter that in. So I'm just going to put in something bogus here. I want to print 1099s for 2017. and I want to print them for whichever type of 1099 type. And from here I can just select print. I don't have to have a range. I do keep the form type on continuous. I can print an alignment first just to make sure that the forms line up properly. And so let me just show you what an alignment form would look like. So that you would put in one of your 1099 forms and make sure it all aligns. There is a window alignment that you can use, horizontal and vertical, so you don't have to get into Report Writer. Typically, if it's off, every field is off by just a little bit, up or down. So you'd make that alignment right here. Once your alignment is proper, you can select 1099 form. And you have a few choices as to what order you want those to print in. So from here, you're ready to click print, and you can print them as many times as you'd like. So depending on how you have purchased your 1099 forms, you may print one stack at a time of all of them, or you might say print 4 copies at once. So here's the 1099 form. You send it to the printer, and you're all set. So I think at this point, I will open up for any questions you may have. Just taking a look to see if there's any questions that have been submitted. And I don't see any. Does anyone have any questions? Hello?
Alicia?
Hello?
Oh, I think I need you to speak up. I can faintly hear someone.
Alicia,
Yes.
how do you choose $600 and above?
Okay, that's actually something that is in the setup of 1099s. It actually has the limits already set up for you. And so if we go into payables and 1099 setup, here is where the limits are all set. And these will get updated during the payroll year-end update. So if you look here, here's for dividend what the minimums are. I think it's miscellaneous, isn't it? I think that's Peter asking me.
Yes.
There's rents, 600 minimum. So you could update these, but these are updated when you do a year-end update. And we typically recommend that if you're doing 1099s through GP. Any other questions while we're in the application?
Yes, I have a question. This is Kelly.
Kelly, can you speak up just a little bit?
Sure. Can you
Thank
hear me
you.
now?
Yes.
Okay, when I go into print 1099, it gives me my company, but address ID, I don't know what to put there. It's not giving me a...
So when you use the lookup, do you have any address to select from?
No.
Okay, so that probably means it just never was set up before. So where you would go, Kelly, to set that up is you would go under the Dynamics GP drop-down, Tools, Setup, it's kind of buried, Company and Company.
Okay.
And in that window, this is where you assign different addresses.
Okay.
And this is also where you put your tax ID number for the company.
Okay.
And the address ID is just a label for the address. Primary is a standard that we always use.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll go back to the slide. I think we have a couple more things to talk about.
Oh,
There is I kind of touched on this. Go ahead.
Can we get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation?
Sure.
Okay.
So there is a GP year-end update each year that typically payroll customers have to do that each year. But if there are major changes to the 1099s, that's how you would get the updates for your system. And so the changes from this year, there was a change to the 1099 DIV form and the 1099 MIS form. And you can get those year-end updates on the Microsoft Customer Source site. However, if you don't have an IT team that does your upgrades, you're best to contact your partner to do that for you. And Green Shades, if you're interested in learning more about Green Shades, this is their website. They offer a lot of different services. We have several customers who use their service to upload their forms electronically. So you can contact Green Shades directly, or you can contact us and we will get you in touch and get a demo for you and all of that. These are some of the things that Green Shades does for you. They print the copies of the W-2 and 1099s. Whoops, I did that again. And I can't get it to go back without minimizing it. They print it on perforated paper and envelopes are available. They print all your forms or a range of forms. Now it's jumping all on its own. Sorry about that. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is that Tidestone, we have a lot of events going on throughout the year, and we have a few coming up. Next week we have the Dynamics GP Users Group, and we're meeting at Woodford's Family Services in Westbrook. If you'd like more information, just shoot me an email or Brandon an email, or check it out on our blog. I believe we've done a blog on our website recently about the GP User Group. We find a lot of companies get a lot of value out of that. We do different presentations each month, and it's a good way for you to network with other companies who are using GP and maybe troubleshoot or find out what works for them. Next month's monthly webinar is going to be electronic funds for payables. So if you want to send an electronic ACH file through your bank rather than printing physical paper checks, you can use the EFT for payables. And then coming up in March is the Customer Conference Convergence in New Orleans. Sandy and I will be attending this year, and we hope to have as many customers join us as possible. It's a very valuable conference. Learn a lot and have a lot of fun. So I hope to see you there. If you have any questions, any follow-up questions, anything you'd like more information on, just let us know and we're happy to provide that. And thank you all for coming, and I'll hand it over to Brandon to close.
Great, yeah, thanks for joining us this afternoon. As I mentioned before, this was the first of many webinars that we're going to plan to do going forward. And as you can see here, we've got the next one planned for the 19th. I will get everybody here out an email this afternoon, just asking for some feedback, but I'll also include the slide deck. I know somebody had asked that question, but I will get that out to you guys, and also include some events that we have upcoming. So any questions, feel free to reach out with a call or an email. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.